Welcome to Pivot2First. Hi, I'm Mike Seidel. I'm the CTO at Pivot2CX. Every day I get to work with some of the brightest minds in the industry with one goal, turning hiring and people strategy into a competitive advantage. Hi, I'm Mike Seidel, CTO here at Pivot2CX, and today I'm joined with David Bernstein, our VP of Sales and Marketing, and today's special guest is Victor Assad. He's formerly the Senior Director of HR at Honeywell and Medtronic. He went on to become the CEO at InnovationOne, and he's the author of a book called Hack Recruiting. I got to ask, because I love the name of your book, what is Hack Recruiting about?
So it's all about, hey, let's use the technology that marketing has been using to improve HR and to improve recruiting. HR is another topic, but to improve recruiting and attract people, let's use really good processes. That's critically important. And let's use what the empirical evidence tells us is impactful for hiring the right people. Not just asking technical questions of technical people, but using good interviewing techniques. And doing all this, and I did this in my work leading different SBUs of Medtronic or Honeywell, leading HR for these SBUs, to shorten the time to hire people, to give a better experience to the candidate, to get more information we needed, and to provide a return on the investment for using these techniques and buying some of the technologies. And what the company gets is that when you hire people faster, they're working on your issues quicker, and you get to bring new revenue to the company, to the bottom line, new earnings faster than you predicted. And Wall Street has a habit of liking that. So it's a direct, a good hit to the bottom line.
You know, Victor, one of the things that we see a lot are when we talk to especially HR practitioners, they really are disconnected from the bottom line, and they don't understand how important hiring really is. And you brought up one of our favorite topics, at least between David and I, which is speed. Mm-hmm. How do you get a team to understand the importance of speed?
How I've done it is measuring it. So a recruiting process breaks down pretty much the same way for most companies I've worked with. And we can measure that, just like you can measure culture for a future discussion. We can measure that. We can see where we're having problems, where we're having delays, where we're collecting bad information. And where there's delays, we can fix that. One of the surprises I've found is that often the delays with the hiring manager. And so when I was leading HR for a couple of units, what I would do is I tell my recruiters, let me know when that happens. I'll call the hiring manager and I'll say, gee, we've been waiting for 2 weeks for a response. These candidates are going to go somewhere else, and let me do you a favor. I'm going to put your jobs on hold until you're ready to respond to us. And then I'm going to give them to other hiring managers that are going to work real quickly. And I had the support of the top executives to do that because they understood why. And people began to get on board. And, we were polite. We told them, let us know when you're ready. We'll get you back in the game. But we got to move fast. And I was doing this 4 or 5, 6 years ago, longer even, before the crisis we hear now. But that's just one example. The other thing is, some companies will have 14 people interview. Now that's gotten better. But if, the research shows if you have more than 4 people interview, the company's not learning anything new about the candidate. So let's not waste people's time. I could go on, but I'll stop there, Mike.
Sounds like there's just a lot of opportunity in most companies to really speed up. And honestly, what we've learned at Pivot has been faster is really when it comes to recruiting better.
Sure.
So interesting thing, you've moved, from being a practitioner, being a director of HR to running your own company. How did you get to InnovationOne, and tell us what InnovationOne's all about?
Well, I actually run 2 companies. One's a strategic HR consulting company. The other's InnovationOne. And I met the co-founder of InnovationOne, really the founder of InnovationOne, Dr. Brooke Dobney, in the San Francisco Bay Area back around 2016. And he had developed through empirical research and in the publishing of over 25 academic peer-reviewed articles how to measure an organization's culture and its culture of innovation and why that's important. So in measuring the culture of innovation, he had divided it up into a wheel of 12 different drivers of innovation. And he uses a questionnaire for this. And it's remarkably accurate. It's very accurate. And based on what comes out of this, he recommends to the company what they should do to improve their culture. And I told them, gee, I wish I would have had access to this when I was working at some places I've worked with in the past, because it just put the finger on it. A lot of organizations believe that, your manufacturing culture, everything comes out the same every time, which is important in manufacturing. Or a product development culture is your innovation culture. They aren't. Product development is about taking that innovation and making sure you can manufacture it or provide it as a service, and then it be consistent. Innovation is everything to the opposite. It's about creating something new or adding to something, and you need a very different culture for that. And the unique thing about it is that when you have a culture of innovation, you're not just more innovative with more innovative ideas. You have higher market share, you have higher profitability, you have higher productivity, because you create openness and transparency, and you build trust. And trust is closely related to profitability, because you move quicker, you guys like speed, and people know more. They have more organizational learning to know what they really need to work on.
Wait a minute. That's a really interesting thing that you just said. There's a direct relationship between trust and profitability.
Yes.
How does that work?
To prove it.
Really? Okay. This is really interesting, because I think so many people don't understand how important trust is. And in a lot of cases, I don't even think they understand what it is.
Well, let's break it down to the team level. So if you want people on a team to be innovative, they have to be willing to trust each other, that if they suggest an idea, it'll be listened to and not laughed at. And they have to know that everyone on the team is going to do their part for the team to be successful. That's trust. If you have a culture where it's do what I tell you and do it now, don't give me no gruff, that's not building trust. That's building compliance. And compliance is needed, in manufacturing. If you're getting a pacemaker or a coronary stent from Medtronic, you don't want the one that wasn't made well. You want, this, great quality and reliability coming
works most of the time, right?
Yeah. But you can still have trust, build trust in the manufacturing line. And I can give you stories about that, where there was an openness created in the manufacturing line, and we can talk later about innovation teams where I started, where an assembler can raise her hand and say, there's green ooze on this semiconductor. I've never seen that before. All the welds are good. I'm told to inspect the welds that the robot made, but there's green ooze. There's something the matter here. She had the authority at Honeywell to stop the line. Actually, this was at Medtronic. And an investigation ensued, and 2 months later, they found out that a supplier changed a compound on a chemical. That would have meant that pacemaker would have gone bad in 6 months.
That's something you don't want.
Yeah. You don't want that. But that little operator, picture your grandma, she had the authorization to raise her hand and say, stop. There's something the matter here. And the company took it seriously. And we were running short on this product out in the field, which you don't want. Sales and marketing is pretty nervous. But stopping that, redoing it, telling the FDA and others, we have a problem here, here's the fix. That transparency with regulators, as well as the transparency internally, saved lives. That leads to profitability.
Just curious, Victor, is there a tie-in between that and any of the work that Lencioni does with regards to dysfunctions of a team and trust? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I published a blog, saying what's the number one factor to improve, team
Hmm.
intelligence and team performance, and looked at 4 different studies. Trust is the number one. And everyone has to understand their role. They have to understand the goal, team norms. All this stuff is good. You need smart people on the team, people who have the expertise you need. All wonderful stuff. But if they can't work together and build trust, you got a problem. And it hurts the
Yeah.
bottom line.
What is it that makes it so hard to build trust in teams? What
Ego. Um,
That was a short answer.
yeah. Well, what often happens is you may have an expert and they think he or she has all the answers. Or they may be in a profession that looks down on the other professions on the team. I mean, the dysfunctions of a team, a brilliant book. I mean, he goes through and talks about all this stuff, and you see it. And so you have to, the leader of the team doesn't necessarily come up with all the solutions, but he needs or she needs to make sure that team is working together or bring in a facilitator to help them with that. Because when you get all these brilliant people working together, you have something. A company may be dominated by mathematicians and electrical and mechanical engineers, but for their new products, they may need bioscience. They may, which is a profession often dominated by women, not men. But that new profession needs to be brought in, welcomed, and the culture needs to adjust for that, and to back to trust. I mean, these are some of the real world dynamics that go in with this. But when you get that team working, you're going to have more innovation, more profitability, new products, services coming out quicker. It's like what I said with recruiting, and that word you guys like, speed. It builds up the speed.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard. It's very, very hard to go fast if you don't trust the people around you because you're always second checking, second guessing.
So Victor, there's been a ton of conversation as well around diversity and how the selling point, right? People have always talked about get a collection of diverse people around and you're going to get a bunch of great ideas and that will drive innovation. I think, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like it doesn't matter if you got a bunch of creative ideas in the room, but if there's not a lot of trust going, that stuff is still going to fall flat, right? There's still a missing ingredient. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and visual diversity is important, and the same traits of a culture of innovation, transparency, trust. And I can go into some other real things that hardcore, kind of hard things like process issues and so on that create it. But when you build this culture of innovation, where you have this transparency and trust, people who may look different or have an accent or different genders can get along more. But even more than having visual diversity in sync is diversity of thought that may or may not be with visual diversity. So it's, diversity, and we don't have as much research on diversity of thought. It can come by, like I said, having a biomedical engineer in with a team of mechanical and electrical engineers. That's different. That brings diversity of thought. But creating that diversity of thought is huge. A company we worked with was trying to come up with new cabinets for millennial mothers. And the suggestion we made was, do you have any millennial mothers working for you? Yeah. Why don't you ask them?
Wait a minute. So you're making a product for millennial mothers. You don't have any millennial mothers working for you.
No,
I have a few millennials.
They had the millennial mothers working for them. They never asked them.
Oh, wow.
So
they didn't even bother to ask.
Yeah, they just never thought to. They never asked an employee what they thought of this product. Gap discovered the same thing about 10 years ago. And I can't remember who published that article, but so do you want your mother's cabinet drawers in the kitchen, or do you want ones for your age? And what would be different about it? And, that wasn't quite that direct, but he said, get a team together, ask them, what do you think of this product? Their own employees gave them the secret to launch new product designs.
So as you work with customers that maybe don't have a culture of innovation, how does a CEO know that they need to make a shift? How could I tell that I need to really look at my culture and go, we need to change something here, and maybe it is we need to become more innovative.
Well, had a lot of those discussions, and often it's the innovation seekers who call us. And what the struggle often is with who is above them is that things are working good now. I can meet next quarter's numbers, the next quarter after that. And the innovation seekers are saying, well, you got this hockey stick thing here. And, the new products and services and revenue and profits are kind of tailing off. We need to get started now on being innovative. Oh, that innovation stuff, it distracts people, puts too much on their plate. And that culture stuff, it's soft, it's squishy, you can't measure it. Well, guess what? You can measure it. InnovationOne has an excellent, empirically developed, reliable tool for measuring it. We can pinpoint it. And broader in the research, there's other examples of this. But it's having an executive being able to be open to look down the road, understand they need to make changes, and then have a guidepost for doing that has markers on it that says, what you're doing now is working, keep it up, or says, what you're doing now is only working 3/4 of the way as what we thought. We need to, we need to do some things differently. Here's some ideas we have. Let's talk about it. Because you can measure culture. You can measure innovation. You can measure innovation to determine, of these 6 things I've invested in based on the ideas suggested by my employees that fit this strategic goal that I put out, I, the CEO, those teams come back and share their data, and you will learn on critical milestones whether to go with A, B, and C, or D, E, and F, or a combination. You'll know because maybe they can't hit the technical milestones, or marketing has said, if we don't release it in 6 months, not 12 months, we're third to the market. Don't bother. Or it's costing too much money. I can go on and on. These are not hard to do. And if you use OKR goaling, where you have the big goal out there and these key milestones you're tracking, you can determine that. I mean, I've been in meetings, innovation meetings, where team D, E, and F has said, we're not going to make it. Take our funding, take our data, give it to A, B, and C. They have a better chance, and here's why. That's the culture you want. The people on D, E, and F aren't going to be fired for failure. They're going to, they're part of the, fail fast, furiously, and frequently to figure out what's going to work and not work. This is part of where a culture of innovation is different than a culture of manufacturing, or a culture that's top down, a culture of compliance. Now, again, compliance is good later, right? You don't want that bad pacemaker, but
right.
That's the essence of it. You can measure it, and you get more profit.
Oh, a long time ago, when I had a whole lot more hair, I went to work for a company that was trying to be innovative, and all of the engineers there, I was one of them, really struggled with doing anything new because we called it hippos. We had these highly paid people's opinions that would come in, and just whatever idea came out, didn't matter. We were just going to do what the hippo said. And so we ended up in a situation where we couldn't innovate. And what you were saying about, you're letting today's tailing off revenue block you from getting to the hockey stick you need tomorrow. That was a way of life at this company. And how often do you see that hippo pattern?
Remember my first answer to you, ego?
Oh yeah,
Ego.
the hippo might be the ego.
Yeah, well, that to me, that circumstance happens more sort of at a team level or strategy session. But back to sort of the CEO, and I wouldn't necessarily put that in the hippo. It's kind of like, do I want to take the risk and rock the boat? Now, a new CEO, a new chief technology officer, a new, chief engineering officer, at that stage of taking over the job, they're okay with uncovering what's not working, and that's what our assessment would do. From a cultural perspective, we're not the technical experts, right? So people new on the job, or people rather desperate, we tend to have more success. But just talking to a potential client recently, and can't get past this top echelon, a couple of them, I think 3 of them, to go ahead and do work with them. They just don't want to rock the boat quite yet.
So the bigger the company, the greater the challenge, I would imagine, right? The more layers, the more middle management. I know when I was a HR practitioner, we used to say middle management is where culture goes to die, right?
Black hole of the black hole of change management or culture or digital transformation.
I mean, is there a CEO playbook on this, on how you do this in larger companies and make it pervasive? Or
maybe that should be the next book. But
hack culture, huh? Yes, instead of hack.
No, there's a CEO playbook for how to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, we have this thing, we talk about 6, sometimes we use 7 traits of highly innovative companies. And the first one is the CEO has a vision and strategy for innovation that's contextual to where they are, what they need financially, what the market looks like, and where's their niche. What's that vision? What are the strategies? And they talk about that incessantly, more than the financial plan. And they invite people, their employees, their supply chain, their external partners, to give them ideas. And they have a process to collect the ideas, a very reliable process to collect the ideas. And they also share information, not anything that the SEC, is going to take them to court for, but they share what they're learning from customers. They share what they're learning about new technology. So people have the information in their head and can speak up, whether it's the woman, on the manufacturing line, or somebody in engineering, or somebody in supply chain. We define innovation as anything new that creates value. So if another company is doing something outside of your industry that would create value for you, that's your innovation. If it fits within that strategy and is going to fit your markers. Okay. And these organizations, they do more than that. They change their hiring, looking for the new talent they need. They change their performance management system, looking for that their performance management system rewards collaboration, rewards transparency, so that people are working together, not trying to one-up each other to impress the boss. Like I mentioned OKRs, of different high-tech companies. If you hit all of your OKRs, well, they just weren't tough enough. In a compliance culture, you want to hit everything because you're fired if you don't after 2 months. But in an innovation culture, you don't want to hit them. I mean, you want to set up a challenging culture that you have to figure things out. And everyone understands when you come back with a milestone where it doesn't work, it just doesn't work right now. Maybe we need to wait 6 months for something. Yeah. But as I said earlier, you don't get fired for it.
So the risk taking, right? A little bit of risk.
Yeah, it's the risk taking.
Yeah. And the trust that it's okay to fail, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Trust. Yeah. Without being, irrational about it. But yeah. Yeah. Again, when you're manufacturing, okay, you can't have any errors here. A pacemaker.
So wait a minute. What you're saying is it's you really do want to make it so failure, if it happens, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but there are some reasonable limits to where failure
in innovation. Okay. And certainly on innovation teams, you want to create, again, this transparent, trusting culture and fail fast, furiously, and frequently. And then the question becomes, what did we learn today? What's tomorrow's experiment? Okay. Now, in manufacturing, obviously you want compliance. You want to do things per the regulations, but you always want to be asking those operators how to go today. Do we have something to work on? Why is it, things don't work well for us on Thursday afternoon? What's going on? Whatever it is. So again, you want that trust, that openness.
Yeah.
Though manufacturing is a little different than the innovation team, but you want to have a whole culture of innovation, not just your R&D people.
And it's not rogue, right? It's not rogue. It's not rogue cowboys going off half-cocked with crazy ideas. It's a concerted, eyes wide open. Let's take a risk. We all of us on this team, kind of, let's decide, right? Type of thing. Right?
Yeah, I mean, rogue cowboys could work in a startup. They often, do. But we're talking about working in with an organization that has continuing operations, or they're past startup. They're making things. They probably have driven out a lot of their innovation, with compliance for Wall Street or the third round of funding, or to make things. But we got to get that back. Be innovative again.
I know, just from the standpoint of having started a few startups, and one of the hardest decisions you have to make is, when do you slow down on innovation, and when do you really switch over to more of a compliance, more of a quality driven kind of metric. It's a hard decision and a hard thing to understand. Well, how do you approach that?
Yes, you have to do what your industry requires for compliance. Whether you're in pharmaceuticals, medical devices, aerospace, on and on. But you don't want to drum out all that innovation. You still can innovate for the future. I mean, how long do products and services last? Now, if your strategy remember I said everything's contextual. So if your strategy as a CEO of a startup is to sell it in 3 years and run, maybe future innovation is not needed after the first or second one. It's contextual. But if you're in it for the long haul, or, to hit your goal of selling it, you have to come up with more innovation. Keep these innovation processes going. And certainly keep them going on the manufacturing line or the services, for a service organization, so that the people doing the business can tell you what's not working. And the closer these employees are to the customers, the more they'll know. Be open to that. They'll tell you. They know exactly what's not going well. So, I mean, and as I said, you can measure culture. You can measure innovation. But, in some organizations, they call this business development. Part of it is always looking externally, seeing what's coming on up there outside of your own backyard that can help you be innovative, or where your industry is going, or who you can, whose table you can turn over with your innovation. That's a big part of it. We've worked with companies where we say, well, I think what you need to do first is you need to get back in touch with your customers. We can do a marketing survey for you, but you've lost the voice of the customer in your organization, and give them all a airplane ticket to go visit key customers and see what's going on, as well as a survey. But then they come back with, then.
So Victor, you've said this a few times, so I've got to ask you about this. You keep saying, we can measure innovation.
It's an employee survey.
How do you do that?
It's empirically developed, meaning, we academically developed, where we started with this is Dr. Brooke Dobney, not me, but, 180 constructs of innovation he identified by interviewing CEOs. And then through a series of surveys, he nailed a construct is kind of a question. And he nailed it down to 72. And that's a very highly accurate survey. Because everyone's over surveying, most organizations can't, and their employees can't tolerate a 72 question survey. So we've gone back and looked further at which questions are the most predictive. And then it brought that down, but with enough question per the 12 drivers that we can tell you what's going on.
How much how much of the organization has to participate in that survey?
To what is statistically significant.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a lot smaller number.
If they won't, it's a lot smaller number. There's no weaning out the whiners, the employees perceived as whiners. We want everyone's input. We want it broadly across the organization. Some companies don't always want to do that, but we encourage it. But we are looking for statistically significant results. We don't want quantified gossip. We want statistically significant results. The executives all the way down to the lowest people in the organization, broadly across. And we look for statistical significance in different subcategories. And that'll give you incredible accuracy, particularly with the questions that we've developed. Again, Brooke Dobney developed. And then we come up with a score for each of the 12 drivers of innovation, an overall score. And then we compare it to either country of interest or your industry, and whether it's a publicly funded R&D lab or manufacturing, high tech, finance, United States, Canada, Germany, we have the data. And so we can make this comparison, and that's insightful because you can see against your group of peers or, the best of the best, how you're doing. And we tell you, don't boil the ocean. Let's start with some basics based on what your data and what you most badly need. And we'll lay it out in a plan about where we're going to start. We're going to start with looking at building trust.
So I'd be interested to Victor, because I've run lots of employee surveys. One of the challenges I've always run into is, do people feel safe? Do they trust that they can speak honestly, even in an anonymous survey? Because the perception is that there's nothing really anonymous. Everybody really knows who's saying what. It's all tracked somewhere. So if people aren't being honest, and you get a halo effect, and people say, anyway, how do you get to the root and really get to truth? Does my question, you tracking my question? Yeah.
Can you handle the truth?
Can't handle the truth, right?
I'm joking from a movie,
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
So we do it with numbers, and I do a content analysis. I go through everything everyone has said, as opposed to keyword search or what word is the most popular. Yeah. Is that good? Is that bad? And look at what the context that people are writing about, and what are these common themes emerging. And so we marry those two, the numbers, and then we add, of all the comments, we add quotes, anonymous quotes, and we don't get email identifiers that come back. It's all dumped into the software. We don't want to know. But the numbers speak with the employees' comments. I've had people call me back saying they were in tears reading about some of the work environments that were created in her organization.
Oh, is this like Undercover Boss? Is that the right? Yeah. Were you like, you didn't know what really is happening at the lower levels, kind of thing, or?
Yeah. They didn't know. Some of them had an idea, but it's not shame anybody. It's all right. Here's where you're at. If you want to improve your market share, your productivity, your financial numbers, we can work on this. And based on your data, comparing it to here's the, your comparison group, here's what we recommend you do. Yeah. So, often it begins with the leaders, that they have not said in a convincing way. Everyone says innovation is important. Everyone says diversity is important. But they haven't been convincing about innovation, or we want your feedback. So at first it's what their messaging is and how often they do it. And if the CEO says, "Oh, I'm not good at that," who would be in your organization? You two do it together and consistently, and then put in place the other things that are missing across the 12 drivers. They may already have, part of it is investments. They may already make great investments in labs and artificial, digitization of the organization and so on. but they haven't invested in organizational learning. Pete Senge had written about that, right? We've discovered that's important. And what that is isn't just your skill training as an individual or a job category. It's what is shared about what's going on outside of our little company. What's the technology? What's the good feeling the customer wants? What is a new exposing social demographic that will change how people buy clothing or how people buy real estate? What's coming in there that, depending on what your industry is, that we have to look at? That's organizational learning. And it's not kept tight. And again, it's not whether we're going to make next quarter's numbers or not, right? And not what acquisition we're going to, none of that stuff, that's IP. It's this other stuff. It's your suppliers, listening to them to say, you have this, there's an upgrade to it. Would this be helpful? You're listening to all this. And you've created a process of knowledge management where teams can find data on innovation quickly. It's digital. It can be can be who to call. Either way, and you work through it. You have a process for making suggestions. There's project management software that's very helpful for this. It's very expensive. Or you do it the old-fashioned way, and that works. And you work through it. I come from a medical device background, so we have different stages of innovation. From ground zero, which is figure it out, to when you're first in man. There's animal studies first, but then first in man, and so on and so forth, working to manufacture it. And so, you depending on your industry, you can take well-known stages of innovation, or we'll give you some, and so you can measure this. So, is this helping, David? Is this answering your question?
For sure. Yeah. It triggered another question, I'll say, in my head as I was kind of like, so do innovative companies, if we tie this back to where we started our conversation as well with regards to hack recruiting and your book there, but is there what are you seeing, maybe that, if any, connection between companies that have embraced innovation and are trying to put that into their culture, and are there HR practices that flow from that, or are they?
Yes.
Is it doing anything in their improving their recruiting and attractiveness, or Well,
good brand helps. Yeah, a good company brand helps with recruiting.
Right.
So a lot of empirical evidence for that. As far as with HR, it's working. Some HR people don't want to. They say culture's not my thing. I'm not the culture person. I think HR should be the culture person, and we have many great HR leaders who are the culture person. So the first thing is advocating this type of culture in a context of the business, right? The other is as you do your talent management plan, including what type of skills you need going forward, ask especially what do we need for these innovation projects to succeed. When we began to bring in biomedical people at Medtronic, coronary and peripheral, those cats wanted a different work culture. So we had to revise our work culture to what made them feel comfortable without destroying the culture that our mechanical engineers and electrical engineers had. And then you have to look at the performance management system. If you're, with HR, is it, if your performance management system was used like the old GE, if it was about compliance and hitting all goals, every quarter, that's not going to help innovation. You have to reward collaboration, teamwork. Teamwork, as I talked about earlier, 3M, they've had some rough years, but 3M, McKnight, one of their CEOs almost 100 years ago, had a rule. If it takes you more than 3 phone calls to get an answer to your question, call me, I'll get it for you. he was promoting, this is going back to like the 1930s or something. He was promoting collaboration and helping the innovation teams. Okay. I mean, so again, performance management may be something HR needs to look at and change.
I keep hearing two words that keep coming up over and over. So we talk about performance management, but I also keep hearing you say the word listen a lot. And it always has struck me when I find myself in cultures that I don't think are very innovative. I always see coworkers and I always see people talking about how no one listens to me.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that it might be a little symptom that there's some culture work that needs to be done?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we have one of the 12 drivers we call connectivity.
Okay.
And a big part of that, is how well employees believe in the purpose, vision, and strategies of the organization and their team. And if they believe their leader knows their skills and abilities,
okay,
and listens to them.
That's a really interesting way of looking. Does the leader know, what the people in the team can even do? That's fascinating, because every time I found myself on a team that, say it felt a lot less than innovative, that was part of it, is that the people didn't even know what the people in the team were good at. And a lot of times would constantly be talking about, we need to get somebody who's better at X. Meanwhile, there's a person sitting at the table that actually is really good at that. And they're getting their bubble, they're getting their balloon popped, even though they didn't even ask for that. Their boss is just basically saying, "Oh, you're not valuable to me."
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, people on the team, the individual feels that. And by the way, people of color, women who, that's what they want. They want to know that they are heard, accepted. The leader will listen to what they have to say, that they're getting the same training everyone else is. Their accomplishments are being acknowledged. It gets back to transparency and trust. I say this is the best diversity program you could have. That's what people want. They want, particularly if they feel to be an outsider.
Well, it sounds an awful like what you're. It sounds an awful like what you're saying is, if we're being innovative and we're building a place where everyone trusts the team, trust each other.
Yeah.
Listening to each other is natural because it just flows from trust.
It does. And, and I want to stress for the CEOs listening that these teams are also hard charging teams. They're focused, using OKRs, and they are, they're trying to hit these goals, but they know that collaborating, they're going to get there quicker. Not everyone likes sports analogies, but on a football team, if the front seven have this strategy in their mind and the back four on defense have a different one, it ain't going to work too good, even if you have the best athletes. So, this coming together is what works. And again, you can fail, and it's all right. You failed in a way that caused us to learn that this strategy for innovation maybe is not the right one right now. It's that one.
So we really do find, innovation and learning are tied together at the hip.
Yep. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay. So what?
Yeah, you could call this a learning culture. We put innovation on it, but yeah.
Yeah, that's part of it. It's funny, the learning culture. The company here at Pivot2First, a few years back, we shifted our culture to we called it a culture of learning, and the big change was really making sure everybody knew it was okay to make mistakes, and it was okay to, it was okay to have ideas that didn't work out. We didn't want to repeat the same failures over and over, but nobody's going to learn if they're afraid of anything new, and so we kind of took that and. We actually made a really big pivot. We had a totally different software product, and we realized when COVID hit that we needed to change everything. And a lot of that came about because the people in the company weren't afraid to say, this isn't working and it's not going to work. We need to do something
Right.
different. And we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, good for you, Mike. My compliments. The last 3 years have been tough, and we're not done with the tough. So good for
some
you that
days
you
I think we're
learned
just getting
from your.
started on the tough. But honestly, it's been this last few years has been really good, and for our company, and a lot of it comes from the fact
Yeah.
that we weren't afraid. We weren't afraid to change, and
Yeah.
we weren't afraid to listen to the people in our team, and more importantly, you kept saying listen to customers early on. Being disconnected from your customers. I just can't stress enough how important it is to be connected to the people that are using your product and buying your product, and those aren't always the same thing.
Sure. Yeah, you're right.
So, as we kind of get to the end of this, I always have a few questions for our guests, and I'll start with the easiest one of all, which is there anything that we should have asked you that we didn't?
Oh, we could have a whole nother, 30, 40 minutes on current trends in HR and why people shouldn't pay any attention to quiet quitting, they should quiet hiring, and quiet firing is just stupid. And, and a few other trends that are out there. So that's what I would say.
Well, I agree with you on the quiet, especially on the quiet firing. But you're right. There's so many things we could talk about. So, next question for you, and this is one we ask all of our guests, and hopefully this just rolls right off the tip of your tongue. But if it doesn't, that's okay. What business book have you read that totally changed everything for you?
There's several. The first one that comes to mind is Situational Leadership. It was written a long time ago. And that there's a model presented in there which says, say you lead a team of 7, you don't treat them all the same way. You lead them differently based on what their competency level is to do their job and what they like to do and what they don't like to do. And if somebody is, loves what they're doing and is fully competent, get out of their way. Propel them to do great things you haven't thought of. Get out of their way. And if somebody's new to the team, that's where you need to be coaching and developing them. And there's a lot of other lessons out that, but that model has great evidence behind it. It's more than 20 years now of how it works. I would tell every organization out there to do that training or something very much like it.
So, situational leadership.
Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, that was a long time ago.
Now, you said you had another one.
Oh, I have several. What's it called? Organizational Performance. Corporate Culture and Performance by John Kotter. Now, this is, again, this is some 20-some years. Now, this is also into culture. But I thought he and James Heskett put together a great book about the importance of having an open culture, not a staid culture. And sometimes, back to your question about HR, sometimes HR people want to, no, this is our culture, we want to protect it. Cultures that adapt and learn do better performance. In addition to our research that came later, Kotter's research was, really insightful when I first read it. I thought it was terrific.
Okay, now here's the really, really easy question what's your favorite movie?
Casablanca.
Oh, wow. That's a classic.
It is a classic. There's several others, but Casablanca, people who are terribly flawed rise to the occasion to do the right thing when it really matters.
Victor, for Dave.
Besides that.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and besides that, bogey will always have Paris. So that's a line from the movie. But anyhow.
So First off, Victor, thank you so much for joining us. For David and the team here at Pivot2CX, thanks so much. Have a great afternoon.
Yes, thank you. Enjoyed it.